Oh, y'all. I gotta be honest with you. I have never done a full lecture on interest groups, and I can't see myself doing it right now. If we were if we were sitting in class together, I would have you guys get into groups and go to the Texas Ethics Commission website and look up several lobbyists and tell me what kind of personalities you think they have, what they spend their money on, what are they reporting, and then I would do about 10 minutes and we would call it a day. It's not that interest groups are not important. They are especially important in Texas. It's just that the material itself is dry. Is dry. There in Texas, interest groups are vitally important because we limit our legislature so much. We only allow our legislature to meet, and this is in the Texas Constitution, 140 days every other year. And then we pay our legislators, all 181 of them, plus the lieutenant governor, make $600 a month, $7,200 a year. So that means that either you are just independently wealthy or you have a job that you can leave for 140 days every other year and still make money. But it means that you do not have an infinite amount of time to devote to Texas business. Now, we have a state with a huge budget. We have a state with complexity. We have a state that is very diverse and has different economies and different needs in different parts of the state. Nonetheless, we do not, at least if you look at how we pay them and how much time we give them to do their work, we do not value legislation. We need it. Somebody's got to write that budget. Somebody's got to make priorities. Somebody's got to write laws and say what will get you put in jail and what won't. But we tie our legislators' hands. So interest groups in Texas, special interests, do a lot of the legwork for our legislators. They sometimes write bills. They help them find other sources of income. I hate to say it that way, but they help them find other sources of income. A lot of our legislators go and work for industries that have come and talked to them. Our interest groups play a vital role. So I promise you that we're about to go through these slides as quickly as we would if I was standing in front of you. But I don't want you to miss the point that interest groups are important in Texas. And because we give our legislators such a hard time, our interest groups in Texas get away with a lot because our legislators need them. So, all right, here we go. We're going to talk about the type of interest groups. There are 3 categories that we are going to discuss: economic groups, non-economic groups, and mixed groups. Economic groups are seeking some type of financial advantages. Those are your business groups, your labor unions, the realtors associations. Then you have non-economic groups. These are groups that are not looking to improve things for themselves, make more money for themselves, have better regulation for themselves, but they are seeking something for greater society. That is going to be your pro-life groups, your anti-gambling groups, your pro-choice groups, environmental groups. So they are not looking to make any money. They're not looking to improve the plight of their clients. They are looking for society in general to improve in whatever way and by whatever means they think is most important. And then you have mixed groups. Mixed groups are pursuing some type of social goal, but they also are looking to have economic advantages for their members as well. So let's look at the list of the groups and how they categorize them. Economic groups, they have agriculture, like the Texas Farm Bureau, business groups, energy groups, red oil and gas, labor unions like the AFL-CIO, occupations and professions like the Realtors Association, Medical Association, Automobile Dealers Association. Those are also called professional groups. And then there are tort reform groups, Texans for Lawsuit Reform, who actually donate quite a bit of money. And what they are looking to do is limit how much money people can get if they win a lawsuit. And that way, that for their clients, who are usually doctors, dentists, but sometimes car manufacturers, they can limit the amount of damages so that a company won't lose all of their money if something goes wrong, or a doctor can won't have to come out of pocket all of the money that would be paid if they did something directly to someone would come from the insurance company. A lot of times the people that are seeking lawsuit reform actually work for insurance companies, because usually if somebody's going to be paying something, it is an insurance company. And so the insurance companies are trying to limit how much money they pay out. Then some examples of non-economic groups. Pro-choice, Texas Right to Life, environmental groups like Environment Texas, Texas League of Conservation Voters, personal liability, kind of the personal liberties. Sorry, that's like the ACLU. There's ACLU Texas, the Texas State Rifle Association, public interest groups like Citizen Texas and Texans for Public Justice, public policy groups like Texas Public Policy Foundation. And then the examples of mixed groups are like TSTA, Texas State Teachers Association. They want to improve education in general, but they also want to make sure that their members are being paid equitably. They put, and I find it interesting, but they put like the NAACP, which stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, MALDEF, Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, LULAC, which they actually spelled out, League of United Latin American Citizens, into the category of mixed groups. And I guess it is true that not only are they trying to improve social issues, they want to make sure that their members are in the best financial situation and are not being taken advantage of as well. So, okay, I'll go with that. Now, why did I take the time to read a whole chart? That is because that's what I probably am going to test you over. And anytime that you are studying for one of my exams, when you are reading the book, pay special attention to the charts. The publishers have a tendency to ask questions from the charts, I use publisher questions because the questions that I write are too difficult to understand. And so, just a little study tip: look at the charts, because the information that they decided to put in a chart is the information that they wanted to emphasize and they think is most important, and that's where a lot of the questions come from. So let's talk about what interest groups do, and we're almost done. Lobbying is really the biggest thing that interest groups do. That is actually making contact with legislators and making contact with people that work in the executive branch and trying to convince them to vote for something or not vote for something that you think is important. Now, how do you do that? How do you get somebody's attention and convince them to vote for a certain thing? There's only so much that can happen. Well, really, what you have to do is form relationships with them. And so, lobbyists are usually people with either expertise or big personalities, because they have to be able to get comfortable with the legislators, with the members in the executive branch, the departments and commissions, and with their staff. So if we were looking at the money that was being spent by lobbyists, it would be on food. It would be on small trips. There's a limit on how much they can pay, and if they spend more than $50, they have to disclose that. So they form relationships with them. They try to throw parties and invite the legislators there. They try to find out what their hobbies are and participate in those. Go play golf with them. I remember one time I had a student in a summer class, and it was a relatively large class during the summer, and she and I just I have a hard time with names. I don't know if you've noticed that. I have a hard time with names. Um, and so, I had seen her name on the roll. We had conversations, but I hadn't committed a name to a face. So my son plays baseball, and we were at a batting cages, and this young lady walks up to me and she goes, "Hey, Professor Bowman," and I'm like, "Hi, hi. You're one of my students, aren't you?" And she said, "Yes." Um, and she said, "I work here." Um, and I'm sitting there looking at her, and I'm like, okay, you go to Stephen F. Austin. This was summer school, so she was not a full-time TCC student. You go to Stephen F. Austin, and she was like, "And I have a boy's name," and I was like, "Tony. Your name is Tony." And so from then on, when we got to class, if I couldn't think of anybody else's name, I could think of her name, because we had that moment where she helped me put a name with a face and associate a face with something that was important to me and to my son. That's what lobbyists do all the time. They try to make connections. They make it so that the legislators recognize them, and so when they need something from them, it's really easy for them to get in. Interest groups do not only talk to legislators, though. They also file suits in the judiciary, and unfortunately in Texas, all of our members of the judiciary are elected, so they can get involved with them really early on, and sometimes quite frankly, affect the outcome of cases. In the executive branch, we have the boards and commissions, and the way that it works. The way we have three branches of government in Texas. We have the legislative branch, we have the judiciary branch, we have the executive branch. The legislative branch writes laws and decides how money is going to be spent. The executive branch executes. So we have all of these boards and commissions and all these people that work for the boards and commissions and departments that we have all these boards and commissions, and they actually execute. They do the work. So they are the ones that make the rules about who is going to be inspected and how whether or not they are going to enforce this a regulation or any of that. So my friend is apparently texting me. So certainly you want to have the ear of the people that are enforcing rules against you. And so that is why they make so much contact with members of the executive branch, because they're the ones that make the decisions about how the rules will be enforced. So, and they have a lot of discretion. A lot of discretion. Now, there is one issue that Texas has not had done a really good job of addressing, and that is the fact that there's kind of this revolving door between members of the executive branch and the industries. So people that work in the industry come and work for the executive branch, and people that work in the executive branch in Texas go and work for industries. And so usually these people know each other. They have worked together. They're trying to get a job. And so basically they make their own rules. That is called co-optation. There we go. There's your first vocabulary word. Development of such a close alliance between state regulatory agencies and their clientele groups that the regulated have in effect become the regulators. This is what we want. Okay, that's fine. This is what we'll do then. So the clientele groups are the industries that are being regulated, the groups that are being regulated, and there's a lot of relationship between them. Many people would say too much. In the courts, the groups, especially groups like MALDEF, LULAC, NAACP, environmental groups, file suit to get a rule change that they may not be able to get in the legislative branch. So a lot of those cases that we talked about in chapter 1, like Sweat versus Painter, that was the NAACP trying to get some rules about segregated schools and separate but equal schools. And they do that all the time. Interest groups have a lot to do with who is in office. They have a lot to, they do things that makes legislators feel like they owe them favors. They also educate the public about what is going on. If you go to, the NRA is having trouble these days, but if you go to the National Rifle Association website, you're going to see all kinds of list of gun control cases that are being filed across the country and in different states. You can get holsters. You can get information. You can find out who your legislator is. They'll even tell you, you might want to write your legislator and tell them don't vote for this. So they do a lot of educating of the public. Some interest groups participate in public demonstrations. This picture that they're showing is when they cut the funding for schools. And so these are teachers that actually went. I have a few friends that participated in that march, that were looking for better pay, better benefits for teachers. Most powerful interest groups in Texas, not hard to guess that they are going to be the business groups, especially the energy groups, the health, finance, and communication industries, and large organizations. Let's look at the chart. So, biggest slice is energy and natural resources. When we get to finance policy, you will understand why Texas is so dependent on natural gas. They get all kinds of money from several different sources, and so they spend a lot of money, and they get a lot of the attention. And next after that is the finance industry, the insurance industry. Remember, we were talking about tort reform, real estate, business, and health. Business organizations, especially energy and natural resources, are the largest and most and strongest groups. Those mixed groups or non-economic groups are just not going to get the attention because they're not spending the money. They don't have the resources to be in there. They don't and get their attention. They don't have the resources to buy Schlotzskys for everybody in the office or take somebody on a golfing trip. And that is what gets the attention of our legislators. So they tell the story of Tesla, and y'all know that Tesla's coming to Texas now. Tesla was trying forever to be able to sell directly to Texans, and Texas had a pretty strenuous law that said that you had to actually have a dealership in Texas and pay those franchise taxes to be able to sell to people in Texas. And that was because the auto dealers industry had worked really hard to make sure that there was that restriction. Tesla had a lot of money. They were lobbying. But the Texas Auto Dealers Association lobbyists worked really hard to defeat Tesla because they did not want to be cut out. Well, now, and that's just to show how you spend money, you go and you talk to the legislators, you say, no, we really don't want this to happen. We're here, we're paying taxes, and so you need to listen to us. I don't care how much money Tesla is spending. It's all a moot point now. Tesla's coming to Texas. So, let's talk about iron triangles. Iron triangle is formed by the interest groups, the members of the legislature, and the members of the executive branch, those departments and bureaucrats. It's probably another way to say that. So the legislators are like, well, who came and talked to you? The members of the executive branch are like, well, these people talk to us. They're like, well, what should we be working on for you? Well, they said that they need this. And so they work together. The interest groups help to get people elected. They hand out those favors. They do the work for the legislators. The only thing about the iron triangle, the reason that they call it iron, is because nobody else can get in. And just notice that people, us, you and me, we are not part of the iron triangle. So things get done on the state level with interest groups, legislators, and bureaucrats or members of the executive branch, and our little needs just get left by the wayside unless we become a part of one of those powerful interest groups. Best way to get you can go and talk to a legislator. You can. And every now and then it might work. But legislators' primary goal is to get reelected. And to do that, it costs quite a bit of money to run for office. In Texas, they're not making very much money. They are much more likely to listen to an interest group that represents a lot of people. Issue networks are these alliances between a lot of individuals and groups, and they work on a particular issue. So it's sometimes there are several groups that will get together. We don't like gambling, for instance. So who would work together to make sure that Texas doesn't have gambling? Well, number one, you're going to have Baptist lobbyists who believe that gambling is bad and that it causes people to do immoral things and causes people not to honor their family commitments and their household commitments. You have Choctaw Nation in Oklahoma, because if we had wholesale gambling in Texas, people would be less likely to come and spend their money there. You have the Louisiana Gambling Association, who they have a very robust, or had a very robust gambling on boats. And if people are not going to Choctaw Nation, then they're going to be on those buses headed to Louisiana to the boats in Shreveport and other places in Louisiana. So their goal is to keep gambling out of Texas. So those groups work together to make sure that laws are passed, and in the instance of gambling, it's part of the Texas Constitution that gambling will not be allowed, not even slot machines. So that is an example of an issue network. A political movement is a mass alliance of like-minded groups and individuals that work together to seek change of government policies. What's good about interest groups? Well, they get people together and they give us a way to get heard. We talked about the iron triangle. For the most part, legislators are not listening to individual people. They're listening to the ones that represent a lot of people. So in Texas, it becomes a really big deal that this is how you get yourself heard. Problems. The ones with the money are the ones that get the attention and the ones that get the laws passed. And sometimes that exploits the little guy. Sometimes the things that get passed are really not best for everybody. And there's all kinds of conflicts of interest. I mean, it is rampant. I talked about that revolving door where people just going in the industry and I'm going to do this for you, but you're going to give me a job, or you're going to give my son a job. All kinds of conflicts of interest, and it's all legal. There are interest groups really are not able to contribute money directly, but we have something called political action committees, or PACs, and those are specifically, their job is to raise money and give money to candidates. So interest groups direct their members to contribute to certain political action committees. And the political action committees get the money to the people that are doing the work that they want them to do. we have a law in Texas that allows elected officials to receive campaign contributions after they've already been elected. So that is called a late train contribution. Ouch. Um, how this is not considered a straight up bribe, I don't know. Because really the only reason that you would contribute money to someone that has already been elected would be to curry favor. I don't know, man. So there is some regulation. We've had some serious issues. I'll just talk about one of them, the Sharpstown scandal. In the 70s, there was the guy that owned the Sharpstown Mall. He also owned savings and loans, and he was trying to get a law passed that would reduce the amount of taxes that savings and loans would have to pay, and would also affect the regulations of savings and loans. So what he proceeded to do was approach a lot of legislators on the federal level and the state level and the governor. And he was not able to just give them straight money. So what he did was he donated stock in a company to them. And so he gave all this stock to all these people. And he sold it to all these government individuals. And then he also sold it to a lot of companies. And so it was part of mutual funds. It was part of products that were that were going to 401ks and other retirement plans. So the company that he was selling the stock in, he donated the stock, and then he told the people to sell it. And the company really was not worth anything. So all of these people, including the governor, sold their stock. They made a whole bunch of money. And so everybody else that had purchased the stock was left holding the bag when the company went defunct. But these people are sitting over here with all this money. It's insider trading, it's contributions, it's all kinds of stuff. And so at some point, Texas decided that they were going to have to regulate. This is the way Texas regulates. They require lobbyists to file reports that it lists their actual clients, the areas of their concerns. They explain how much money they spend. There's a limit on how much is spent. And they tell how much they spend on state legislators. Now, there are ways to get around it. Like if you take someone to dinner or to a concert or to a sporting event, and you split the bill with other lobbyists, then you keep the money that is spent, the total money that is spent, below the threshold where you have to report. And I mean, even if you have to report it, the Texas Ethics Commission, which is where these reports are housed, they have the ability to charge fines. They have the ability to actually file criminal charges. Do they do it? No, they do not. They do not. So critics of the Texas Ethics Commission say that the public is very ill-informed because the way that we do the reporting is it's very broad. It's hard to read. And we would find, if we were looking at some of the Texas Ethics Commission's report, their website goes down all the time. And so, number one, people don't know where to go to look. Number two, people don't even know that they should be looking there. And number three, they don't do a very good job of maintaining their website. And number four, they don't enforce anything. It is a very unusual thing to see that the Texas Ethics Commission calls someone to task for violating the law. So, there it is. This is a 2015 integrity report, State of Texas Public Integrity Report. Texas just does not do a very good job of of carrying out and letting the public know what is happening and noticing for lobbying disclosures. F. Public access to information. F. We have elected officials that are under active indictment right now. Do people know that? No. So, there it is in a nutshell. Hey, I did 36 minutes of a lecture about interest groups. Write it down. I might play this when I go back on campus. I might just play this for the students because I don't know that I can do it again. Y'all have a good day.